I'm just going to introduce the panel. Today we're going to be talking about future innovation for Africa. So we've got on the panel there, just so I can see this screen. You know what? I'm actually going to come like this. Sorry, I'm not attacking you guys. You know, sometime I'll leave this table thing and sit there with you so we're more comfortable with each other. But we've got Pastor Sam there from my father's house, RCTG, a church that I go to, and there's a lot of population of black people there. We thought we'd bring him in to talk about. And we've got Lorena Cristino. She's from the University of Manchester, and she's the president of the Young African Leaders Forum over there at Manchester University. We've got Dr. Oladimeji Ojerinola. Yeah, did I get that right? Yeah? I'm sorry, from Connect Talent. And that is a charity that tries to connect talent in Manchester and look after the black minority and black ethnic minority. I think the mic is for Dr. I'll just give it to him there. Just because we don't have one of those mics. I know they gave me, I have two here. Thank you. But we don't have one there. Well, they all have mics. Okay, still have to pass it around. Okay, she says we have to pass it around. Frederick from the University of Salford. He does his PhD research students in social business, social marketing. Am I right there? Yes. And we've got the final person, our main star today, Joanne Purves. And she's the Pro Vice Chancellor for International and Regional Partnership. So I'm very happy to have you guys in here. Thank you so much for coming. And I hope you guys enjoy it. If you have any questions, you can ask that at the end of my questions. No questions. No questions. You can ask it after. All right, let's go. Oh, Amos, I'm so sorry. You're not written up there. I'm sorry. We automatically just put him on there. But Amos is a motivational speaker. He was out at our first event. There was not. Some of you were not there at the launch event. He's a motivational speaker and just motivates young people to do the right thing. It's time for you to do the right thing. Come on, let's do the right thing. Yeah. Thank you, Amos, for coming. I'm so sorry. You're not looking shy, no. So sorry. Right. Let's go. Let's do this. Let's ask this question. So I'm gonna drop the question on you. I'm an ethical person now, so I'm thinking, how should I do this? Should I just go from here?
So we'll ask you the question, and then if you believe that you can answer this question and share your opinion with us, then you can take the mic and express it.
Lucy on my back. Right. So the first question there is, what is the difference between innovation in Africa compared with the UK? So what is the difference of innovation in Africa compared to innovation in the UK? How would you see the difference in this innovation?
I'll kick off. Firstly, by saying, although you said that I was the star attraction, that's really, I feel very, very humble in this company. So, and I would not say that I'm an expert on African innovation at all. However, I would say that the differences between, from my point of view, the differences are innovation in Africa. I think there's a bit of a downer on, oh, we're not innovating in Africa. Actually, people in Africa are innovating every day because people have to get around some of the structural deficiencies that there are. So there are huge amounts of innovation going on in Africa. I think what is lacking is the structure around it and the support to enable it to spread effectively. And that's something that we can talk about later. But the innovation is different from here in Europe because it's answering different questions, and it is much more closely related to the Sustainable Development Goals, which I was delighted you put up because I have them in my diary. And it's very close to answering some of those particular issues, which I think is very exciting, because if the ecosystem around that innovation was right, it would go a long way towards answering some of these real global challenges.
Sure. Thank you. And anybody else? Yeah?
I totally agree with the fact that we are answering different questions and tackling different issues. Therefore, innovation in Africa tends to have another focus. And I would say that for me is one of the things that inspire me the most about my continent and personally about my country. I'm originally from Angola. Is actually the creativity within the struggles, because you can be facing lack of access to adequate education or health, but at the end of the day, you still see people laughing, people finding ways to survive. It is sad, but at the end of the day, shows how much creativity and how the ideas our people have can be implemented, but again, it's a question of structure, but also funding and belief that people can make that change.
I love that. The fact that structure is a difference in the innovation in Africa compared to what in the UK. Does anybody have anything to add to that, or?
If I would just put some little contribution, I will come from a different perspective. I see the entire world system, the entire world as a system, whereby I will want to make a very huge comparison within Africa and the UK system. I want to see it as a balance of the system, because whether we like it or not, the UK system relies on Africa a lot. So without Africa, the UK system can't survive. So rather than, when you talk about innovation, it depends on what context. So I will believe that the continent Africa is very innovative in their own right. So, and every of the system have their own parameter of evaluating how successful they are. Though Africa is still getting there, and we still believe we're still going to get there where we want to be, but in our own right, we believe we've achieved right a lot. Whether we like it or not, every of the continents relies as loads of human resources from Africa sustaining those systems. And will even up to United States, the last president was from that part of the. So that is how Africa has been as its own right. So I want to use the United Kingdom as a parameter of evaluating how successful Africa has been. I would say Africa has been successful in their own right.
I think the gentleman there makes a very good point, because if you look at it in there's so many different contexts that you could look at it in. So for instance, if you look at the family, just the togetherness and how you've got the close-knit communities as well, how families rely on each other. I think that in itself is innovation. And then also you get people in terms of work where yes, they do the regular 9 to 5, but they're very entrepreneurial, because they can't just rely on a salary. They need to be doing other things as well. So very rarely you might find someone is just getting their income from the salary itself. They'll be doing other things as well as running a business. It could be a shop, it could be absolutely anything, but they're always trying to do something other than just the income that they've got from the salary. And then as well, if you look at technology, things like mobile money, it's setting the trend, leading the way forward. So I definitely say Africa is innovative in many ways, yeah.
Thank you so much. Anybody wants to add to that, or no?
Yeah, I just want to say that it is true, Africa is innovative, and in various contexts you could look at innovation like the previous speakers have said. However, we cannot run away from the fact that we still have our deficiency. I mean, when you come to the global and international stage, well, as a continent, fine, but we do not exist alone with that, and can only, measure your success by having a benchmark. So when we introduce benchmark to it with other continents, then we want to say that the supporting structure is lacking, and probably we have issues around poor or weak governance, which also have a lot to do with how innovation is brought to bear.
I agree with that. The benchmark, yeah, that's why we chose the UK, the number one economy in the world. You want to say something?
Yeah, I think the problem, like the other speaker said before, is the parameter with which we judge innovation. Because if you sincerely look at Africa, Africa has been existing for a long time. You want to talk about, dressing. We have our own culture. We have our own, dressing. We have our own food. We have everything. If you go back, to the past, and where I read and I was told that even civilization started from Africa, from Egypt. They started from Egypt. But I think the problem is the way a lot of us see these things. When colonization happened, what happened actually was, we were isolated. They came to indoctrinate us, to tell us that, our system is not good enough. To tell us that we as Africans, we are not good enough. And so, the challenge now is every one of us wants to be like the Europeans, the civilized world, want to dress like them, want to talk like them, want to behave like them. If it's not made in this part of the world, then we don't think it's authentic. We think, oh, it's not good enough because it's not made here. We have people, we have cobblers, we have, now in Africa there's a company, Innosim, that's making cars. And the problem, the challenge we have now is Africans will not patronize people like that. They rather want to go for the Bentleys and the Rolls Royce and the big cars. And we have people doing the same thing. Instead of us to encourage them, come all out and encourage them, to become as big as the ones you have in Europe, because they started like this and now they have become big. And everyone it's all about branding and the way they make us see these things. They make us think, because you don't speak like an European, then you're not as good as a European, because you're not dressed like them. And it's not particularly convenient for us. They brought the ties and the suits to Africa. It's a hot climate. It's a tropical climate. It's very hot there, but we embraced it and we accepted it as the norm. And so that's the reason why it's affected the way even our younger ones and the children are seeing innovation. Innovation in every way. Our ideas have to be, foreign for it to be accepted. I think we need to change that and begin to think, Africa and look around us to make the desired change.
I want to add something to that, and I just want to. I'm so sorry. I think out of the box, and I think for Africa as a continent, we need to get to that point where we need to have our own standard within. Because if we end up keep chasing Europe, if we end up chasing other part of the continent, I don't think we're going to get anywhere. We need to, because I'm from this part of the country where it's called Nigeria. We have a market where it's called Aba Market. There are loads of things, innovative things, even though they are not original, they are very close to the original product. Yeah, sorry, I'm going to create that division, and I'm going to stir up that conversation tonight. And I think it's high time we need to see and we need to take within. We have a lot of things being used in this part of the world that have been made from China. China is sustaining the world as a date. And likewise, Aba can sustain the world if we develop that part of Nigeria. Not until when we get to that point where we have to think within and rely on what is being produced in Africa, we'll keep on chasing innovation till we won't get there. We won't get innovative anywhere. We'll just be working with other people's standard. We need to have our own standard and measure ourselves by that. That is who we are for now. But that doesn't mean that's where we're going to remain. We're starting from somewhere where Europe is today. They started from somewhere. They didn't get there overnight. And that's why I find I'm not of the opinion of putting all total blame on the government structure. We can have our own input individually. And the system we have is a combination of several individuals. Our own little culture in patronizing what comes from Africa goes a long way as Africans. And if we don't start embracing what comes from that part of the world, we will endlessly keep chasing what we call innovation, and we won't find it. So we need to go back and embrace ours fully and give support to these innovative young ones surviving despite no light, despite no road infrastructure, nothing. They don't have the finance, they don't have anything, but they are still using their brain to produce something close to what we can obtain in Europe. We need to embrace them individually. We need to embrace them collectively for us to see the innovation we want to see in Africa.
Sorry, I think I just want to try to ensure that we are addressing the question in as much as we have our thoughts, which is fine and you can express that. The question is asking how do you see innovation between Africa and the UK? That's a parameter.
That's right.
And we need to, discuss along that line. Now, not only that, yeah, I agree that Africa is innovative, good things are coming, looking at the culture, looking at, the manufacturing systems, looking at education, we are innovating in our own way, within our own context. However, if we continue to, if you are producing what could not be acceptable or buy into by other people from outside that culture, then there have become a lot of problems. The China we are talking about now can produce goods and be acceptable in the UK because they have a standard. They have a parameter. They are looking at the quality. Now, if China will consume all that they are doing, I don't think the economy will have developed as much as what is developing today. But they are looking beyond their own continent. They are looking into other continents, other countries that can buy into their innovations. So the innovation we are talking about is not just to be consumed by us alone. We have to be innovative and looking forward beyond our own local setting.
Sure.
We are looking at other countries within the Africa themselves, and you are looking beyond, Africa as a continent, into other parts of the world.
I agree with that. Thank you so much.
No, I just wanted to talk on that point because
First question?
I'm so
It's
sorry.
only first
I'm going
question.
to be
But yeah,
really
go-
brief.
yeah, okay.
Touching on that point, I totally understand that we have to think outside of our box. We have to think based on other continents as well, because at the end of the day, we also wish to play a significant role on the global arena.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, and as one great friend of mine once said, is charity begins at home. We cannot compete at global level without understanding ourselves and believing ourselves first. It's not about closing ourselves towards the world. It's actually trying to understand how can we solve our problems first before we can open up. Because if we just open up and try to see, okay, that continent is the continent is doing this, Europe is doing this, Asia is doing this. It's good to see what is going on in the world, but it's also good to look at ourselves and what has been done so far. How can we correct the mistakes that we have done along the way? And then after solving all of that, looking outwards, because China, they closed their borders at some point. They understood their system, they understood their failures, and that's why now they are able to play at the global level. So basically, I would say the main key is actually challenging our present narrative. But in order to challenge that, we need to understand our past. We need to understand where did we fail, or what challenge did we face in the past that we are not facing now, and we can do better. So yeah,
I agree.
basically that.
I'm waiting for the person who's going to actually put Abba Market on the website next year and put it there for innovation of Abba Market to be a production for the rest of the world. Please do that. One of you think of it. I might do it. Yeah. Okay. Next question. The comparison with Africa and the UK is always a hot one. Yeah. So let's move on there. How can we encourage young people to explore innovation in Africa? So we've talked about all these things. Just coming from what you said, how do we make? Let's start with you. How do you think we can encourage young people to explore innovation in Africa? Or you know what? It's open to everybody. Anyone can
It's
answer.
already starting now,
Yeah.
isn't it? It's, if you look at culture, for instance, there's a lot of young musicians from the UK who are putting out Afro beats or just music that's reaching out to the continent. So in that perspective, it's already started. So
You think music is
I think it
Definitely.
is, yeah, because they're leading the way in terms of producing new sounds as well. So they're innovating in that sense.
I think I'd like to say this as we need to build the enabling environment for these things to happen. You see, you have a lot of monopolies in Africa, to the extent that, if you're good at a thing, if there's somebody already in the market or doing that thing, they try to to stop you from rising. And so we have to create the enabling environment. And my brother said earlier, he was talking about quality. I don't think what we produce in Africa is not of quality. I think, if you go to Aba, if you've been to Aba, You know, they can make a Gucci bag for you, and you will not be able to differentiate between the original and the fake. The problem is not about originality. The problem is, you know, I mean, we have been indoctrinated to believe that if it's from Africa, it's not good enough. It has to be, I mean, foreign for it to be good, you know. And so these people, what they want is just an enabling environment, the structure, the governance that will give them that projection, you know. And that's what happened in music. In our time, while we're growing up, we grew up listening to Michael Jackson, MC Amas, and the rest of them. I mean, old times, you know. But now in Africa, the Nigerian musicians, in short, I went to Uganda and someone told me Nigeria is colonizing the whole of Africa with their music. And you know, when you get to other African countries, you see these people, you know, and that's how they grew, you know, and grew, and it became, I mean, a force to reckon with. Before now, no artist from America would want to like do any collaboration with Nigerian musicians. But now a lot of them are doing collaboration, but not just collaboration, now they are coming to Africa to see what we're doing. And so if it's about originality, we have it. I think it's just that enabling environment that we don't have.
Can I just make one point? It's gone from consumption to creativity. So now it's production. So people, rather than just take, now they're thinking, how can I give? And that's a very important thing, that, because, you know, if you're just living based on what can I get, and then there's only a certain limit that you can get. But if you're given, it shall be given unto you. So, you know, yeah, I think it's important to produce, create, rather than just want to consume all the time. So I think that was an important point as well.
I would basically.
Let's think about the young people.
Yeah, no, that's why my point.
The young people.
No, basically, I think as a young person, one of the things I miss the most is actually being encouraged to do something, and especially something that I love. Even though I'm doing like a degree that is like, okay, one of the mainstream ones, law with politics, I think that at some point, many young people feel like they cannot pursue, like, let's say, I feel like art, because it's not within the law, engineering, or medicine that your parents want you to do. So it's basically allowing young people to believe in themselves and invest in the field they are passionate about, because at the end of the day, we neglect art so much when it comes to innovation, but actually art has been playing a huge role throughout like ages, centuries, like even in eras like of post-colonial eras, or even during colonialism, music played like a key role, like empowering the anti-colonial like movement. So why cannot musicians, artists play that role now and actually contribute to development of the continent and innovation in general? So basically for young people, I would say, in order to encourage them, we need to show them that we believe in them and they have a voice at the end of the day, regardless of the degree they are doing, or even if they are not doing any degree, like just show them that at the end of the day, every single one of them plays a role, like within the development of the community. Let's not even talk about the continent, because the continent is very diverse. There are many countries, and within each country, there's so much diversity. So I think it's actually showing them that, look, within your community, within your village, let's say, you have a voice. You can start something. And we are here to support you, because what I feel is like there is a huge gap between, even though we respect our elders a lot, there is a huge gap between generations in the dialogue. So I feel like it's really important for us as young people as well to search for information. We are privileged now. We have access to information. We have internet. We have our elders that are like huge libraries. Like I see my uncles as libraries. I sit with them and I just get a lot of information that I'm like, okay, I can do something about this. So I think it's not just about government or the older generation encouraging us, but also us at the end of the day encouraging ourselves. Like, we are all here in this room today. What can we do for each other? How can we start a network and actually merge ideas and start something? And it's not just about starting, it's actually having an effective plan to sustain that idea.
I'd like to just add that I think education systems, and I would say this happens in the UK, you know, the West, Africa, everywhere. Education systems are built in a way that they take out creativity as students get older. So we end up having to put it back in by putting in things like entrepreneurship models into our degrees. Actually, what we need to be doing is recognising creativity, innovation and entrepreneurship at a much earlier level in the school level and nurturing that all the way through and calling it out for what it is, because I think young people, they come up with ideas but they don't realise what they're doing. They think innovation entrepreneurship, that's something somebody else does, and they don't realise that they're actually creating their own every day. And we need to, as educators, I feel that we have a duty as educators to call out, you know what you're doing there, you've come up with a great idea that would be of use to somebody else. What can we do to help you do that? And I think, yeah, that's a big miss, and it's whether it's Africa or here, I think it's common. Yeah.
Well, I just want to say, encouraging the young people to explore innovation in Africa. I'm talking about young people here or young people in Africa to explore innovation in Africa, or people in diaspora. Which one are you looking at?
I think we talk about both.
Yeah, you can. We need to encourage young people. In generality, young people are not even doing anything.
Well,
in general.
I think
so how do we encourage them to actually exploit
innovation in Africa?
So anybody can innovate in Africa. I don't think it's only Africans that need to innovate in Africa. Even young people from here, I always say this, that we need to create international leaders. They would lead things in Africa, but live over here. They don't have to be in Africa. So
and that's the point. To stand up for the internet and the
there we go. Yeah.
The
so,
e-government and
social collaboration.
The e-commerce that you have all over the place now. Now, I think the first thing we need to do is to see how we could speak to the government to improve things around governance. Until when we start having in Africa true governance and real governance, whatever innovation people are trying to do from here in Africa will either be eroded, stilled, or killed by things that surround our governance: bribery and corruption, greed, nepotism. I mean, you can name them. Now, the difference here to Africa is that because good governance is embedded in all levels of government and is also generally acceptable by the people, you can see the benefit of it that accrue from good governance is beneficial to all citizens. Now, in Africa, that is not the case we have as it is now. We know there are a lot of campaigns going around about the human rights, about fair play, about open, and good level field for all participants. Now we have people who have amassed wealth, hemp money from here, try to introduce business or to nurture or to establish something in Africa, and they've not been able. They've come back with a sorrow, a very sour outcome. So to say, I think we need to first ensure that we could, either through participation or through forming a pressure group, make sure that we could put pressure on our different governments in Africa. How do you explain where people are there and they amass the leaders we have there only know and they live for themselves? They have a lot of people who are not paying salaries, the environment. Even when you take innovation to Africa, who's going to buy it from you? People are not empowered, people are impoverished. So until we start looking at how the good governance can be entrenched in the whole system of the governance in Nigeria, in Africa, as a continent and different countries. Of course, some countries may have to lead this. Probably we have some key countries who are probably they could play the focal point. But I think to drive home my contribution on the encouraging young people to innovate more in Africa is about creating environment, enabling environment where people can participate, where people can, their human rights is guaranteed, where their innovation, whatever they innovate, the property right is going to be protected, and where they can establish business, and the ease of doing business will be easy and not still naked. Except you have all that in place, whatever innovation we are trying to do there, sometimes just like putting resources into the drain.
I feel as people we should find, if we do something, we change the government mind. So
That is it. So
the young people will change the government mind.
And another point I need to say, sorry before I, now, there is no gainsaying that the rest, the burden of innovation for Africa rests on the shoulder of youth. You cannot take that away. And unfortunately, over the years, we have been having succession without successors, the way the leadership goes in Africa. So we need to galvanize our youth. Let our youth need to build up their capacity and capability. Like the young lady says, in whatever field of endeavor you have, there's no shortcut to hard work. We need to ensure that we are doing our best, making impact, trying to create some sample of influence and collaborating with one another. You've invited some people from different walks of life here, working together, getting ideas like this, and making sure that we are not working as individual person. The collectivism is also key. So together we can bring ideas together. Together we can get a synergy of effort and make sure maybe we put more pressure on our people to be, the government to be able to open the levels field for the people so that the innovation can truly take place.
We don't want to run out of time.
Can you ask questions?
Yeah, we'll definitely ask questions. Definitely. I feel like most of these questions that we have up here has already been kind of answered.
Yes.
Like it's already been answered. I'm gonna skip the one is what is the future of innovation in Africa? Next thing you know, we'll be hearing about again.
You lot.
So
That's the future.
yeah. How can we innovate? How can innovation become a value? We should ask that one because we've already said it. It's the standardization, all this kind of stuff can create that sort of value for the innovation that can be done in Africa. Now, I want to ask this question. Is there a measurement or monitoring system already in place for innovation in Africa? Because I remember we started with the fact that innovation is already happening in Africa right now. So is there a measurement or monitoring of this system already in Africa, in place in Africa to monitor this innovation? Because I know we always say we should leave it to the government. The government should always do this. But is there something, because I know in the UK they have a lot of things that measure. They always have the system, they always measure something. The council would actually go around doing surveys about what is happening. Is there a monitoring or measuring system already in place for innovation for Africa? And if there isn't, how do you think we can do that?
I think for that question we have to, again, not talk about the whole continent, but the countries. There are countries like South Africa that have one. But at the end of the day, one of the challenges of measuring innovation is like the data collection. Because it's very difficult at the moment to get I would say efficient data collection and something that we can actually gather and study from it and actually come up with solutions, because it's never like around 100% accurate. And I think statistics are never 100% accurate, to be honest. But again, I believe that it's not about measuring it that makes it successful at the end of the day. Like, that's my personal view. It's not about measuring it that you're gonna say that innovation has been successful, but actually seeing how it has been like improving people's lives. And for that, you of course, you.
Wouldn't you say that's measurement? You're seeing how it impacts.
No, I know. That's why I was saying it's quite controversial. But at the end of the day, it's not just that determines the success of innovation.
Sure.
That's my point.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, I think it's very challenging right now to measure. But I think there are measures. There have been initiatives by the African Union. But at the end of the day, it's still like we still need to tackle those challenges before we think about measuring innovation as a whole.
I think there's a difficulty because a lot of the measures and the measures that get used in the UK, you're measuring activity. You're not actually measuring the significant impact of what's going on, and that's much more difficult. And if your innovation was working, actually you could have 5 innovations that improved the lives of millions of people and were worth much more than 2,000 innovations which just attracted a few.
True.
So it's how are you going to decide
Which one?
on that?
Yeah.
I
That
think
would-
we already have a mechanism in place in Africa, as far as I know. And I think it's whether there's room for improvement. Yes, there's room for improvement. We may need to do more. But presently, I mean, if you look at particularly Nigeria, my country, the last election that took place, the way people are able to monitor the electioneering processes, collect results, and make it difficult for rigging to take place as it used to be. And it has been acknowledged not only within the African setting, even at the international by international organizations.
I think it's because they fought them there. Thanks to Kerry.
Messaging
And saying don't do anything wrong here. So that's still
and
the
that makes
international
things
countries.
much easier. And the change of government, there was much ease in the change of government that it used to be. That it used to be volatile. People contest election results and things like that. Yeah, if you look at the area of in the area of economic and financial crime too, there has been some monitoring institution that are in place that is working to see how they can cope the menace and the viral of this, the issue of bribery and corruption that is going viral. So, with the TSA innovation that the government put in place, we are able to monitor so much, loopholes that has been created in the system over the years and block some of the blockages that is difficult for people to actually siphon money, with ease. Yes, they still need to improve the system, but it's been recognized that at least it's working and the impact is being felt. So, straight to the question, does it have? Do we have the system in place? Yes. Does it need to be improved? It needs to be improved.
Yeah.
But we already have it.
Well,
And not in all areas, but at least in those 2 areas. Yeah.
In my opinion, I feel like it's not everywhere around Africa. So you have it in Nigeria now, but that's because some corporate companies have a interest in Nigeria, so they tend to want to do things
That's
that
good.
way for their own interests. But that's just my opinion. So
Oh, yeah.
I'm not gonna counter it. And even monitoring it, how do you monitor what's happening there? How do you know that like Joe said, how do you know that this innovation you put there is working for this people? So you're monitoring it like this innovation is the right innovation, not that you've just put it there and just because you want to make money. You put it there because that's going to help everybody in general. That's my opinion. That's my thought. Monitoring, measuring. You monitor the right thing and then you measure it if it's doing it for the right people. That's my thoughts on that one. But yeah. Anybody has anything to say more on the monitoring and measuring? No? Okay,
Yeah,
let's just
actually.
move forward because we're running out of time. I'm just going to ask 2 more questions and then I'm going to leave it up to everyone who has any question to ask. Yeah. I'm going to put these 2 questions together, right? So who should handle innovation in Africa? Is it the private sector or should it be a public sector? Now, that would go to the government now or should it be a private sector? Who should handle this monitoring, measuring, or all these things of innovation that's happening? Should it be a private sector? And then what is the difference between social cultural innovation and science and technological innovation? That'll be the final question there. So you can answer one or the other, or you can answer both of them together, whichever one you answer. And then we'll put the question back to everyone.
I think no, go. You go.
Go.
That's fine.
I think the monitoring, Is it the monitoring or?
Oh, no, who should handle that?
Who should handle?
Should it be private people or should it be public?
Well, I think it should be more of a partnership
Mm.
between the private and the public sector. I think, and while there could be those that could be strictly private, depending, because it now depend on, because I think what I'm trying to struggle with is in respect with the innovation is in one context, because it makes it quite a complicated one. Because if you're looking at it from the technological perspective and the non-technological, it's a two different area. Because I think if we get clarity on that, it's going to make the answering much
That's
obvious.
why the question there, what's the difference between social, cultural innovation and science and
Yeah,
technology
that-
innovation? Do they work together or did they just
Yeah, that's
separate two entity of innovation or I don't know?
Yeah, but because I won't be answering that, I was just like that's why I was been strongly with in with the innovation part point of view. I would think because like I rightly said, it should be a partnership, and they should because I'm always of the opinion not leaving everything that has to do with innovation on the government. Because I'm not saying the government system in Africa has failed. I'm not saying it's not working, but I always believe there's a place where like one of our speakers said, the collective unionism or the network could go a long way, but it also goes a long way with having ourselves reorientated and having our own personal drive as to what we want to bring to bear. Because you made mention of the cultural, the social part, because I'm from the social perspective, I'm always believing so much on the social impact on the lives of people about what you're bringing to bear in any community. So if something is going to impact people, possibly moving them from point A to point B, you've done a lot. It doesn't have to be something you can measure monetary wise, but it's how it can, because I'm actually studying or reviewing several materials on social value in the UK system. We're actually not, because the system doesn't have an agreed system in measuring social value within the system. So it's not something that has to do with Africa alone, but it has to do with even all over the world within the academic community. But one thing I am always keen about from the social impact about whatever you're doing, is it as an individual or collectively as a group, or not putting it all the burden on the government. I could, as an individual, could look back into Africa. If I'm based there in the UK, I could look for 2 or 3 lives or 2 or 3 individual young people that I can invest in. It could be sponsoring their education down the way. They don't have that fund. You made mention of the advert we see on the TV, donate 10p or something. It irritates me whenever I see that advert all over the screen. Should be able to look back into Africa or where I come from and look at how many people can I impact their life. How can I take them from that point where they're struggling from and be able to make them a bit comfortable, empowering them in my own little right to be able to stand for themselves in the future. So that goes a long way. If I, as an individual, can do that, and collectively, individually, we can have that done by looking back into Africa and supporting these young ones. Then, because there was a documentary I saw or something where a little lad, I think from Kenya or something, he developed something like the lighting with some sticks or something to be able to chase away animals from their farm. And that's something he's been able to do creatively and to be able to stop destruction of their farm product by just producing that little lad will come in the future and be able to do something greater than that, because he's been empowered in that little way to be able to bring that to bear. So I think that to a large extent, I'm not condemning our system in Africa, is done their own little right, but we as individuals, we should be able to, in our own little right, be able to look back into our system in Africa and see how we can make that impact, that social impact individually, to be able to change lives and take them to that next stage of life.
Definitely.
I think in terms of science and education, I think the government's got a huge part to play. I mean, if you look at East Africa, for instance, in Rwanda, the government's had heavy influence in terms of technology, where really led the way forward. In fact, across the world, have led the way forward in terms of internet and just availability with broadband, you know, near enough, all Rwandans can pretty much get an internet, and they've got, you know, really good access as well to it. But yeah, I think the government's got a huge part to play. You look at Ethiopia, the way they've invested heavily in terms of the airline, you know, is leading the way in Africa. You look at the economy, the things that they're doing, the collaborations that they've got with countries such as China and Europe as well. You know, there's a lot that the state can do, and I think they've got a huge part to play. But individually, I think private, you know, people individually themselves have a lot to do as well. Again, it comes back to what we're talking about when we're saying culture, leading the way, being entrepreneurial, you know, coming up with ideas and so on. I think a lot of people have responsibilities, and it's on them to do that. And again, with society, families have parts to play, you know, to lead the way forward, to say, you know, this is what the standards we set, and hopefully for the youth to take that baton and run with it as well, and to keep it going. So I think everybody's got a part to play in it, rather than just looking at somebody and saying, you know what, you do that, and we sit back. But everybody has something to do.
I'm just gonna give a chance to ask. We're gonna take two questions. I support all of this. The questions were really targeted in a way, but you know, the private and public sector, I think they should work together. That's my opinion. I think the social and the technology part of innovation can also work together for a collective innovation. So this is just my thought, but we put the question that way just to see how, if there is a difference, or is it working hand in hand to actually fix this problem. Do you want to say one thing, because we just want to give the audience questions, because I'm thinking people are itching right there for one question or two questions. Yeah. And then,
you want to pass this round?
Yeah. Anybody has a question? Anybody? Henry, I thought you had a question. Did you have a question?
Yeah.
I think we can hear you anyway.
You can use the mic so the camera can hear you anyway.
Okay. I think the first thing is the criteria for innovation. Is it being like people in the UK or in the US? Is that innovation? Is it trying to build our own thing? So I think we need to be clear what innovation is for us as Africans, because I think most times we try to be like people here. And the truth is, most of the things that work here cannot work the same way in Africa. So the context is really different, and when you try to transpose it, like from here, let's transpose what we have here, maybe to Nigeria, for example. Nigeria is a difficult terrain, and most of the things that work here cannot work the same way in Nigeria. So what are we defining innovation to be? Is it trying to tweak what is working somewhere else, or trying to look into our own system and trying to develop our own system?
So I'll just say one thing there: redefine.
Redefine, right?
Yeah, but yeah, we'll leave it to the panel to answer. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah. So that's my question. Yeah.
So any?
I would say innovation is innovation. You're just answering a problem that you've got. And just because the problems are different in Africa doesn't mean it's a different type of innovation. It's just, yeah, you're just going to what it is.
Yeah.
It's like the mobile currency that we were talking about earlier. Yeah, it was answering an African issue in terms of microfinance and not wishing to use banks. And it's not something that is growing here. It's definitely going to come here, but it's not because of the reason that it was an imperative in Africa. And it was a student who developed the software. It was bought by Safaricom for the M-Pesa currency. Yeah, it's an absolute textbook case of innovation and in that case, an ecosystem that worked around it for it to happen. And it's African innovation, but it's still innovation. It's no different from innovation that comes here. It's an idea that answers the problem.
Sure. But it is, that's what I'm saying. So I'm trying to get a definition. Are we saying, because I've always talked with him what he's trying to do, are we trying to make our own thing? Yeah, which I think that's what we should do, in my opinion, because I think we need our own education. We need our own way of doing things. Because the way they do things here can't work for us. You know, so for me, I think, yeah, we have internet, we have TV, so we know what's going on in the world, but we still need to sit down and say, you know what, Africans, OAU, for example, what do we want to achieve in 2018? So I think we need to come to that point where we define what the standard is for us.
Yeah.
I think I agree with him to an extent. It should not be about transposition. It shouldn't be. The truth is, innovation is innovation, but it should not be about transposition. But what we do most of the time is to transpose it. Take what we think is working in Europe and try to just bring it to Africa. And most of the time, the indigenous people that are trying to make things happen, for instance, you know, we try to kill their ideas. Now, like I said earlier on, you know, it's just the branding. Now, before now, we didn't have things like in Nigeria, McDonald's and KFC and all that. But now, you know, they brought them to Nigeria. And most Nigerians feel like you're part of the happening society, happening group. You want to go to those places instead of go to the ones you know for. And so it should not be about transposition, you know. And I've seen some Africans that have made, you know, they made, in Nigeria especially, they made a difference with the things they did. You know, they have proper African restaurants and made it, to international standard. And so it shouldn't be, it's about tweaking, like you said, just tweaking. Because innovation in the true sense of it, I like the way the Business Diary put it, and I like to read it. It says, just a minute, it says, innovation is the process of translating an idea or invention into a good or service that creates value or for which customers will pay. And so we want to do something different in Africa. It shouldn't be all about the way it is done in Europe. You know, let's come back home. What will work for us? How will this work? And how can we make this thing sustainable? You know, we look at it, do what we have to do, and ensure that it's sustained. And one of the things, last before I leave, I think reorientation actually in the area of education for us Africans especially, our kind of education is certificate oriented. You know, we come to school just to get certificates. You see someone doing the master's, the PhD, and in the end, you know you're not going to be doing anything with that. You just want to go to school and add that title, doctor, to your name, so that when people see you, they think, oh, okay, he's arrived, he's a doctor. It shouldn't be about that, you know, and that's not innovative at all. You know, we should sit down, like you said, and I like that. It should not just be about formal education. It should be informal as well. You know, here they call them fashion designers. In Africa, you call them tailors. You see, you see. And so if you can make those tailors, those carpenters, you know, change their orientation and see this as, you don't have to be a doctor, you know, to be effective, you know, to be influential. You can be whatever it is that you want to be. So that orientation, it shouldn't be all about certificates. We all came to Europe to get a certificate, paid a lot of money. Just imagine how much some of us pay if you just want to just take, accounts, you know, and sum up how much the Africans in this place have paid since we came into Europe for schooling alone. We are the ones paying the billions of money, because the resource, the education resource that they get from all over the world is in billions. We come here and pay £20,000 for recalls, you know, and we have like 5,000 or how many Africans coming into this place. So it has to all change.
Okay.
You know.
Sorry, we just have one more question. Oh, I keep.
Yeah.
Okay, just. Yeah,
Can I just
just a short one, please.
Yeah,
short one.
Yeah, innovation is anything that addresses problems, either ideas, products, or services, as long as it's going to impact the life of people. And I want to say that innovation, it doesn't matter where it is developed, whether it's developed in Asia, it's developed in UK, as long as it is addressing a particular problem of a particular people. So it can be developed here and be contextualized in Africa.
Thank
It
you.
can be developed in Asia and contextualized in Africa. So there is no issue about that.
Just one question, and then we need one answer. Like, the question is it a yes or no question?
No.
No? Okay, go.
from what the young lady said about using our own people to look up to, I feel like Africa's been suppressed, as in like we look at them like, oh, we can't do anything, and that's why I feel like we're looking at other countries, and I don't think we should look at other countries and look at our own people. Like Congo, we have a lot of musicians, and from personal experience, my uncle is also becoming a musician due to our community, the same way Nigeria has. And I feel like instead of looking at other people in other countries and how they're progressing, we should just look at ourselves and not compare to other people.
Thank you. Thank you for that contribution. That's a great one. Yeah, look at ourselves and let's collectively. One more. Yeah, Leon, you want to say something?
I've heard a lot about art and culture, but I believe like we're minerals on our own. I believe like we're resources, with the gold, with the diamonds, we never run out. So what I would suggest is, besides bringing out innovation, it's good that we establish businesses here. If you take a look at what Asia is doing here, especially in Pakistan, people opening up shops, opening up restaurants, and opening up businesses. It's not always about culture, music, and all of that. Because those musicians are keeping that money to themselves. So you can be working a lot.
Some of them.
So you cannot be saying, oh, in Nigeria, Davido is a middle name.
Yeah.
But you know the middle name. So I believe if we establish businesses here, if we become billionaires, if we get involved, we get in bonds, foreign exchange, forex, stock exchange, all of that. That's how we're going to progress.
Matching for the resources.
Yeah, so if we become more intellectual and understand how things run, and if we bring our business here, then we can send the money back home, establish more businesses, which the money will never run out, because we can legal businesses to our kids. Instead of us
That's difficult.
trying to grow ourselves, we have to be minerals here, because we can never run out.
That's true. Awesome. Because we need to give 5 minutes to Martin to say something about a trip, but okay, very fast, 60 seconds, go.
Mine is just a quick question, and so almost like a challenge. And my question is, does Africa lack innovation, or does Africa lack development?
Oh, I like that question.
There's nothing in the UK that we can't get in Africa. But there's nothing that the people here in the UK do that you can't do in Africa. And if you can't get it in Africa, you have the money to get it. So my question is, does Africa lack innovation, or does it lack development?
I'm going to actually answer that question. I feel. Chair.
No, go
I'm going to
ahead.
answer that question now.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, I feel like we are a developing country. That's why we call it a developing country. So we're developing. Oh, I like to think of it as a country. Sorry. I like to think of it as a country because I'm the president. So I'm just joking. I feel it's a developing country. It's developing continent, so it's developing. That's why they call it developing world. But innovation, like has been said, it solves a problem. And there's so many problems in Africa. That's why we need innovation. So I would answer that question by saying we do need innovation, but we are already a developing country. Anybody wants to add to that? Yeah.
I'll quite disagree with that.
Okay.
Like, just slightly disagree with that because, first of all, I don't. And it's a personal view, guys. You don't have to share it as well. But I don't like the terms first world and third world, or even developed and developing country, because at the end of the day, each country has its own way to develop. And by saying that some of our countries, let's say, that are developing, we are already comparing ourselves when we are all different within every single region. But I love the question because it's very tricky, and I was actually trying to think of an answer. But I think Africa does not lack innovation. It lacks development and management, especially. We have the resources, we have the services, we have the labor, most of all. So I think at the end of the day, it's how we manage and understand ourselves. It starts with our minds, actually. It starts here. Like, the first step is our mind. Once we put in our minds that we are capable, that we are powerful, and we are gonna do this, we are unstoppable. Yeah, I would say that.
Yeah.
Just a quick one. I agree that we don't lack innovation, it's development. And the truth is, like you said as well, you see, in Africa, we think, we always think, prosperity is in the minds we have, and so all we try to do is just to, to go for the gold mine. I mean, because we have the gold mine, we think that's where the wealth is, the gold mine, the mines in Africa. Whereas in Europe and other countries, they know the development starts in the mind, not in the mind. We have oil in Africa, in Nigeria especially, and we still have to export our oil, to Europe to be refined, and they sell the refined
back
product back to us in Nigeria, because the wealth of a nation is not in the minds they have, it's in their mind. And so we have not developed our minds, and that's why education-wise we need to develop our mind, reorientate our mind. Let it be all about development. In Africa, most of the companies you have in Africa, they don't have research and development departments. You just have the companies, they just start, one man, one individual has everything, and
We need to innovate it.
We need to do that, so that we begin to work, let's work on our minds, so that we can go back to Africa and bring innovation or development to Africa.
Sure.
I think we also need to encourage ourselves, some of us who have benefited from the Western education and practice here, work here, to also find time, go home, and give back to where we come from.
Yeah.
So there's supposed to be exchange of cultures, exchange of knowledge and idea and
that's where the whole point of innovation comes from, because then you take
Africans
that.
are the biggest givers, Africans give more than, to the continent,
Yeah.
they give more than anybody else.
But
So in that sense,
I feel, just to say this, I feel like development is under innovation. It's literally, innovation covers it all. Like, development is something that we say, but innovation covers development. It's like the umbrella, because under...
I think it's the opposite. I think development covers innovation.
Development and innovation, because innovation is like the new thing.
No, the innovation is within development. Innovation is about
I'm gonna look into
ideas.
this. I'm gonna look into this.
To me, as an individual, I don't think actually you're just playing with words. I think they are intertwined, and you're just trying to bring up something. So I think you can't say you're innovative and you're not developing. So I think they are synonymous. That's my own point of view. I could be wrong. And also, I just want to lay base. I think Africa as a continent, we're doing that at the moment, but I think we need to go more doings and less talking.
Yes.
I think as a continent, we talk a lot. We say a lot. We come up with different strategies. We come up with different approaches. But when it gets to the field, we find ourselves shying away from it. I think as a continent, as everyone, I think I would challenge everyone on the panel and everybody sitting in this room as Africans. Let us get our hands dirty and get doing things. And rather than us doing loads of talking without any action.
Best way to end that whole, the best way. So all of you get your hands dirty. Come work and get this done. Right, anyway, this is it. Thank you guys for coming. Thank you for the panel. Let's give them a round of applause. We all looking for people to join our event team, social media, or marketing team. So if you want to be part of that, give me a shout. You see me around. Definitely shout at me. Snapchat.